Hi, everyone. Welcome to this info session we call Founded in 1477, Get to Know Your New University. A lot of difficult words. Thankfully, I will not be holding this presentation. With me, I have Mika, who is our university guide, who will do the presentation. But as always, if you have questions, you can put them in the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen, and we'll get to those after the presentation. With that, I'll leave it to you, Mika.
Well, thank you, and hello, everyone. And I will apologize in advance because this thing with sharing screen and starting presentations is always a bit of a horror for me. Arc. Exactly. Yes, sorry. I stopped sharing. Let's try this again in a calm and relaxed. Oops. Exactly. This is the things I don't like about this. I'll try to come back to you. I do apologize to everyone again. There.
Now we can see your screen.
Hooray!
And
I do. Thank you very much. And I do apologize. I am a historian. I am most unhappy with computers that are not driven by Steam. And now we can start. A squirrel. Why a squirrel? Well, if anything should be the mascot of Uppsala University, it is this little animal. 1477, it was decided to create the university in Sweden, and something was needed, not as a bribe, but just to, well, little gifts to help with getting the permission. And that suitable gift was 11,000 pelts of winter squirrel, as you see, which was very popular in medieval Europe to use on the edging of your clothes and cloaks and so on. So this is actually the animal that made the university. The man that ordered this, well, we actually don't know what he looks like because there's no really good portraits of him, but a representation, the Archbishop Jakob Ulfsson. The university was started by the church to combat brain drain. Young Swedes looking for education would travel to Europe. Paris, Prague, and Bologna was the most popular ones, but also Strasbourg, Montpellier tended to be rather popular. So the students went from Sweden and they never came back. And the Archbishop felt he had to do something about that, and the university was created. This is the charter given in the name of the Pope. Sweden was still a Catholic country at that time. So this is actually brought into the city the 6th of October, 1477, giving an official birthday to the university. We do actually still celebrate it, but not with cake, as I think we should. The early university, we know very little about it, or rather we know surprisingly much about one student and very little about the rest. This is from one of the notebooks of this first student, or one of the first 40 students, Olaus Johannes from the island of Gotland. He have left 8 huge volumes with lecture notes, and out of the 8, 7 have survived. And it is actually a marvel to go through them. You can follow 4 years of teaching at Uppsala University almost day by day. And for people who study medieval history or the history of education, this is quite remarkable. There's really nothing like this preserved. The original university building was situated just next to the cathedral. And if you look at this picture, you may notice that in the middle of the picture, just next to the cathedral, on the left-hand side of the cathedral, there is an open space. That's not actually a square. That is where the main building of the university stood. And that plot has never been built over. So there stood the medieval university. Then in front of the cathedral, the white building, you have the Gustavianum, who became the next university. And then higher up on the hill, the new university buildings. I'll come back to both of them. But the connection to the church was obvious. And the city was very small. Some of you maybe heard me yesterday talking about this. This is the earliest good map of the city we have. It's a plan from the 1650s, although the map is probably drawn a little later. And it shows you that Uppsala was not big. The university was a big institution in the city already from the beginning. Although the university suffered from the Reformation, Sweden stopped being a Catholic country, became a Protestant one. The power and authority and also the wealth of the archbishop diminished. But this rather serious-looking individual, King Gustavus II Adolf, Gustav Adolf the Great, according to the Swedish way of doing things, stepped in and provided us with a huge donation. He gave 300 farms, half a river, and actually the south bank of that river, and enormous tracts of forests and quite a few other things to the university. This donation made us economically self-sufficient for more than 300 years. And still today, when the turnover of the university is, I think it's almost 8 billion Swedish crowns, still today, his donation provides 4% of that. We still have it. We don't have the river anymore, but we have most of the farms and most of the forests still with us. So that was a most kind gift. And it, of course, restarted the university in an effective way. There was money, we could expand. And part of that expansion was to build new houses. And this is the then new main building, the Gustavianum. And sadly, this house is now completely covered in scaffolding and building plastics because there's a big renovation going on. It normally houses the University Museum, but if you have to be here more than a year, if you're going to see it opened. And at the top, you have that rather strange looking cupola. And inside that, of course, you have an anatomical theater. It was used for autopsies and public operations. The man who built it, Olof Rudbeck, professor of practical medicine, professor of theoretical medicine, professor of architecture, mechanics, philosophy, mathematics, astronomy, music, and history. Yes, he was a very busy man. He is one of these forces of nature, basically, in the university history. From the 1650s up until his death in 1702, he poked his nose into everything and picked up any post that was vacant. He was prepared to try anything, really. A good medical man, a quite inventive linguist, and an archaeologist of some interest. But, well, here in Uppsala, we have decided that when it came to naming something after him, it became the Rudbeck Laboratory, which is where the genetic studies are done today. And I think he would be happily intrigued by this. I should also say, I mentioned briefly that Gustavianum is the university museum. The university is running 14 separate museums. So basically everything from Egyptology to paleontology, classical archaeology, Nordic archaeology, science history, and so on. Some of them are open. Sadly, 5 of them are located on the Gustavianum, so they are closed, all of them right now. But still, the university still have all these museums and collections and gardens, and they are free for you to use as students of the university. Now back into famous people, and this actually rather shy individual is Anders Celsius, professor of physics and astronomy, or actually astronomy and physics. And today, of course, he is mostly remembered for this. There, in the lower part of the picture, you have one of the 2 original prototypes for the centigrade scale thermometer. And he did that as a purely practical thing. It was not a big discovery from his point of view. He needed something for good temperature measurements. He started meteorological records here in Uppsala in 1739, and they have basically gone on from then until today. And from 1740, they have been done in degrees Celsius. So think about that next time you write or see the letter C after a temperature. It's not centigrade, it is actually Celsius. And in the back of this picture, you see a pamphlet with a rather square-looking house, that's the Celsius Observatory. And it still stands today, although without the observatory at the top. It's just a flat ceiling now, but it still stands just across the pedestrian street in central Uppsala. So he is there, but doesn't make much of a noise. It's just that odd yellow building on an angle to everything else, but now you know what it is. The next name, which of course is the huge person in the university's history, is Carl von Linnaeus, the botanist. He actually was professor of theoretical medicine, but it was regarded as perfectly normal to have the professor of theoretical medicine teaching botany, as plants was used for basically all kinds of pharmaceuticals. So a doctor should know his plants. And Linnaeus, of course, took the whole thing a bit further by developing Systema Naturae. This is not the first edition, by the way. This is one of the later ones, but was the one I could find a picture of quite quickly. And in the Systema Naturae, he creates the classification system for the different, well, basically everything, plants, animals, insects, everything. That's where the binominal name system comes in and where all the classes are introduced. And this is one of the stickers that you still see in the Linnaeus Garden, the old botanical garden. They are still hand texted. And there you have the name in Latin, you have the continent where the plant originates, you have the name in Swedish, and then you have the numbers where the plant is in the system. And on this one, you also have the letter L, showing that this is one of the plants named by Linnaeus himself. He named more than 12,000 species. So a fairly active man. You have the old botanical gardens, which are today the Linnaeus Gardens. And yeah, I had a few pictures, so why not? Pond in the middle, of course. And at the corner, the house where actually both he and Rudbeck lived and died, although with 65 years in between. That building is today a museum, so you can actually get in and see it. But as I said, as maybe you heard if you were on one of my talks yesterday, you have to be quick because the tourist season ends in September, so you have roughly a month. Outside the city, you also have his summer residence, Hammarby, which is a quite wonderful place. It's basically the summer house of an upper middle class person of the late 1700s that has been strangely well preserved. And then, of course, it's being Linnaeus, it has its own botanical garden as well. But it's going to be 12, 13 kilometers north of the city, so you can You can bike out there, or you can, if you're a bit adventurous, take a bus, but the bus does not really go close. So bike may be a good idea. And then just to add all the things that are named after Linnaeus, down in the new botanical gardens, you have this large building, which is a Linnaeanum, which is basically a temple to Linnaeus. It used to be the Department of Systematic Botany, but now today, the Swedish College of Advanced Studies of Social Sciences, that's quite a bit of title, uses most of the building. But it's also used by the garden. So they have the orangery there. They keep many of the more delicate plants indoors over the winter in that very large building. And yeah, couldn't help this. Mood lighting at night. The park is quite impressive. Next to the park, you have Carolina Rediviva, the main library of the university. There is actually 13 other libraries spread out at the various campuses, but Carolina is the main one. And I feel I have to prepare you a little for Christmas, or yeah, Christmas in this case, winter, I was going to say. So there will be the occasional picture with snow from now on, just to get you in the proper mood. Inside the Carolina, well, mostly you have a working library, but you also have the old book rooms. And sadly to say, you need special permission or a special reason to get in there. But if you can, they are quite wonderful. The rest of the library is a big working library, so use that place. Autumn, falling leaves and all that. But what I wanted to make sure that you noticed on this picture is the balcony at the front of Carolina, because autumn comes, then winters, and then spring. And the good thing is that we know when spring starts in Uppsala. That is the last of April every year. The student gathers and there's this huge carnival. And exactly 3 o'clock, everyone gathers in front of Carolina to see the Vice Chancellor step out on the balcony and put his white cap on, thereby declaring that spring has reached Uppsala. And I think you can see there's a lot of white dots here. So people, this must be a little after 3 o'clock, because people are now wearing their white caps. You're not allowed to wear them until after 3 o'clock. The Vice Chancellor first, then everyone else. Next to Carolina, or 200 meters away, you have the main building of the university. That's actually where I'm seated right now, but in a very dark room, I must admit. And the main building was constructed for the university's 400th anniversary. It was a gift from Parliament. And yeah, prepare, winter is coming. Inside, you have this rather wonderful entrance. And even if, I mean, you're always welcome to step into the building. And even if all the other rooms are used, this is always open, so you can always take a walk around in here. And it's a good place for pictures. To the right on this picture, behind that big wall that you see, you have the main auditorium. And those of you who will come for the reception ceremony, you will actually enjoy this room. It was meant to hold the entire university. It was built to hold 2,000 people. And that was the size of Uppsala around 1885. And the big stage, we have actually, there's two totally different occasions on this picture and on that picture. But what's going on here is the conferment of the doctorates. And that is a huge ceremony, happens twice a year. The student unions, the various nations with their flags, student marshals, and then everyone else take part in this huge event. And it usually ends up with the person receiving his doctorate, receiving a hat or a laurel crown, depending on which faculty you are, and your diploma, and then taking a bow in front of the Vice Chancellor, the Archbishop, the Royal Governor, possibly the Minister of Education, and 2,000 people watching you. So don't slip up in the bow. The diplomas, they are, of course, handwritten, properly sealed, and everything like that. So they're actually work of arts, but well, you just see them folded up here. And the number of people who used to take their PhD or the doctorate, I should be more correct there, the doctorate used to be quite small. This is the total yearly production. I think it's 1937 or 38. This is 2016. And as you can understand, the picture is actually cropped a little on the edges. It's bigger. 50, when you receive your doctorate, well, it tends to be the big ceremony. Something happened that was regarded as quite unusual some 50 to 54 years ago. And that was that a man and a wife, husband and wife, received their doctorates in the same ceremony. And the thing is, 50 years after your doctorate, you are recalled to Uppsala University and you receive a new doctorate. And I mean, it's so good for this story that both of them were alive. And it's sort of, yeah, nice little combination. So that's something to think about if you aim to get your doctorate here at Uppsala. Mark the day plus 50 years in your calendar as well. And also the main hall, that's where you will be doing quite a number of activities, especially now in the welcome week. So you will see this place packed with people. Then I should just add a few of the other buildings, because in the later part of the 1800s, there was a fanatic building activity in Uppsala. So the various buildings that became Chemicum, actually new and old Chemicum, Physicum, all these buildings you can hear from the name, chemistry and physics and the sciences was there. This has all been joined into an area now that is referred to as the English Park. And that's today where the humanities are located. So don't be surprised if you're going to do languages or something like that and you're being told to go to Technicum or do theology in Chemicum or so on. The names of the buildings are still there. The uses have changed. 1872, something quite dramatic happened from the university's point of view. This lady stepped in and became the first female student. This is Betty Pettersson, a young lady from the island of Gotland. So both the first male student that we know about and the first female students actually came from Gotland, which is sort of interesting. She did modern literature and modern languages, and got a rather good degree, a bachelor in 1875, and then went on to be the first female teacher at the state boys' school in Sweden. Sadly, this good story then spoiled by the fact that she also got tuberculosis and died at the age of 46. So good beginning, sad end, but 1872 was the beginning. Today, there's actually more female students than male students at Uppsala University. For the Jubilee, the 500 years Jubilee in 1977, a new complex was created. This is the Biomedical Center. It is huge. It's very confusing. And as I think, just by looking at the picture, you can understand that you will spend a lot of time in corridors, and looking out through the windows in the corridors, you will see 5 identical inner yards. So it may be very difficult to figure out where you are until you get your bearings in the house. There's also a double level basement, which may be a bit confusing for people until you get used to it. But this is, of course, well, biomedical center. You hear what it's used for. This gentleman is the reason for the name of the next complex. This is Anders Ångström. And if you need the measuring units for something very, very small, then you go with an Ångström. There's actually father and son, but it is the father that is the most famous of them. The Ångström laboratory of today does actually not look like this, because this picture is now 2 or even 3 years old. I haven't found a fresher one. So the parking lots that you see both in the lower right and the upper left, they are today covered in buildings. This is the upper one. This is the new house of the Ångström laboratory, and it's big. This is where basically all the sciences are located. Everything that isn't at the biomedical center, all the sciences that is not at the biomedical center, everything else is at Ångström. And then this is not an impressive picture, but this is a complex that you will not figure out how big it is until you enter it. It looks deceptively small, low buildings, nothing very high. This is Economicum, where most of the economical studies are done. But the building is partly buried. It's in a slope. So from the front, you see quite little of it. And yeah, once again, prepare. There will be snow. But the latest addition to all the buildings of Uppsala University is the main administration building, and there has been more or less competitions of inventing new names to this. If it is the spaceship, Battlestar Galactica was quite popular, the Fortress, the Ocean Liner. Well, inside it's much more open and airy. So. And that's, of course, where you have the main reception, and that's where you will probably get in contact with most of the people, get you started on your studies. Some of you have probably already been there, because I understand that quite a few have arrived already. A few practical things to sort out. The seal of the university. You see it in the background here and there, and may actually be worth taking a look at it, because, well, it's you now. The seal, of course, functioned as the signature of the university. This was another way of signing a document. You put the official seal on it, and we still have the seal made of silver that makes this stamp in wax. And around the outer circle, you have Uppsala Academia Uppsala, rather. So the academy in Uppsala. And then if you look at the drawings in the center, you have the sun and the earth. And 3 words in Latin: gratia, veritas, natura. Grace, truth, and nature. And how this is supposed to be read has never officially been decided. I am not a Latinist. I tend to do the translation that many of my more Latin scholared friends are not happy with, but I think it makes sense to say something along the lines that to reach the truth by the grace of God and the study of nature. But gratia, veritas, natura. That's the motto of the university. And the seal has been with us since 1600. And then, of course, comes the question of Nobel, Alfred Nobel and the Nobel Prizes. Alfred Nobel did never attend Uppsala University. His brother, his youngest brother, Nils, did, to study theology of all things. But brother Nils apparently was more interested in explosives than in practical theology. So he actually snuck off from Uppsala one weekend, went to his bigger brother's laboratory in Stockholm, and sadly managed to kill himself and 8 other people in a big explosion. So Alfred was never really happy with Uppsala. He was an honorary doctor here, but as far as we know, he never attended any official event at the university. Uppsala University, various scholars from Uppsala University are involved with naming the Nobel laureates, but Uppsala University as such is not one of the bodies that picks the winners or the laureates. It is a complicated question to say how many laureates Uppsala University can claim. I tend to make people confused by saying it's somewhere between 8 and 19, depending on how strict you are supposed to be. I should say the probably best known laureate was in 1962, Dag Hammarskjöld, the second General Secretary of the United Nations, who died in a very mysterious plane crash in present-day Zambia, trying to negotiate peace in the Congo. And our latest, Svante Pääbo, last year's medicine laureate, studied here all the way up to his doctorate, and then he went on to Germany and so on. So that's where he's active today. But I see we are wearing the same tie, the red university tie. There are two official ties for the university, and this is the slightly older one, but good. I admire his taste in ties at the moment. The good thing with the Nobel laureates in Uppsala University is that not all, but many of the laureates comes to Uppsala after the prize events in Stockholm, and they come to Uppsala and lecture. And that event is always on the 13th of December. So unless you have a really, really good reason, don't leave the city on the 13th. 13th of December, there will be lectures, depending on which laureates that will come. So you never really know within which fields there will be, but they will lecture here in Uppsala, usually on campus, depending on, I mean, the chemistry prizes will go out to the Ångström and so on and do their lectures there. Some of them will lecture here in the main building and so on. And the interesting thing with these lectures, there are no tickets. There's a queue. So first in line gets in first. I should also just briefly mention this thing that maybe have not shaped so much of university history, but most certainly have shaped the history of the students of Uppsala, and that are the nations. There are 13 of them. The pictures I have, I just happened to stumble on some pictures from the Norrland nation, which is the largest. Each of these nations go back to a medieval concept where the students from a region would band together. And that was very practical. Most of the students would be from the same social groupings, middle class, lower to upper middle class, basically. And it was a good way of, you could bring mail for each other, you could bring messages. Your fathers would probably know each other and so on. So the nations was very good at building bonds. And they got buildings. Norrland Nation is actually an entire city block today. They are the biggest, more than 16,000 members. The smallest, which I think is a sort of a toss-up today between Gotland and Gothenburg Nation, is below 400. So there's a big difference. The nations provides housing, places to eat, good place for lunch, non-profit pubs, which is very popular in this country, I can assure you, all kinds of activity. And they also do big official events. And this is, of course, official. This is sort of a training in how to sit down in official dress. You see of our two gentlemen here, one is wearing black tails, which is the official dress for solemn occasions at the university. Or, as the other one, this is Norrland Nation, and the other gentleman is quite clearly of Same extraction, so he's wearing one of the costumes of one of the Same groups. And for the ladies, well, long dress, high gloves, or if you prefer, black tails as well, or national costumes that fits. And the thing with these sittings are that they are a training for official dinners. The idea is that you should not be nervous in future life sitting down with 6 types of cutlery, 5 spoons, and 8 knives, trying to figure out which one to use. You have trained already at the nations. And of course, you usually have a lot of fun, included actually the man with the biggest laugh. You can see, actually, he used to work at my section of the university, and his laugh, yeah, you could hear it. He was a very jolly man. And then, because I'm running out of time now, I just wanted you to also have this in mind, because I realize I can never overstress this. There are seasons in Uppsala. There is an autumn, there is a winter, and there will be snow, and it will get dark. So prepare for that, so that it does not come as a surprise to you. You will have plenty of things to do, but you have to have that little preparation. And don't wait until tomorrow. If the sun is shining today, use it, because you really don't know what tomorrow will be. And the final picture, I just thought you should see him. This is the Vice Chancellor. This is Anders Hagfeldt. So if you happen to meet this gentleman, you should be aware that this is our boss. This is the man in charge of Uppsala University. His own research is solar cells and biological films for solar cells. So biochemistry in a rather specialized form is his field. But that's actually what I had for you. So I will now give you at least, well, I don't know how many minutes we have left, but hopefully we have a few minutes for questions.
We do. Thank you so much, Mikael. There are no questions yet. I'll just repeat. If you have questions, you can put them in the Q&A box. But I do have a question, or maybe something you can clarify. I've lived here for a couple of years, and a couple times a year you can hear very large bangs very early in the morning.
Yes, that was perhaps very good that you pointed it out. I did not include that. Twice a year during the doctoral conferment ceremony, we actually have an artillery salute in the middle of the city. And to make that ceremony very, very clear to everyone involved, the salute starts at 7 o'clock in the morning. And if you live in the central parts, you will hear it, I promise you. There will be 2 or 3 guns firing 20 or 30 rounds, blanks of course, from Castle Hill, and you will hear it. That's at 7. Then if you manage to go back to sleep again, all the bells of the cathedral will start ringing at 8. And by that point, you probably should be up. And then during the day, when the ceremony in the aula is going on, in the main auditorium, where the people are receiving where the diplomas and the hats and the laurels are being delivered, there are gunshots for that as well. So there will be quite a bit of artillery in January, in May, and there will probably also be a few shots in October when we install new professors. So don't be surprised. The university usually put up warnings, and you may get alerts from that about the gunfire. Yes. Do we have anything else?
We do. Max is wondering, do you have to buy your own studentmössa?
Yes, I'm afraid you have. You can, now and then, you never really know. You could buy a new one, of course. They tend to be a bit expensive, not excessively so, but well, as you can understand from the grayness of my beard, there was some time since I bought mine, but I think they're 700 crowns or something like that. You quite often find them secondhand lying around. And I know that the university on some occasions have handed out fake paper ones just for fun, but I haven't seen them. So having one is good, but I mean, no one cares really. They were an important social marker 50 years ago, but not anymore. But it's nice to have something to wave with.
True. Yes, we have a couple of questions, and yes, the recordings will be shared afterwards. There is one person who is wondering a bit more about Geocentrum. I don't know if we have time to go through.
Yes, as I mentioned, there are 13 campus areas, and I do apologize. I did not include pictures of all of them. Geocentrum is located just behind the Botanical Gardens, fairly small, actually the smallest of all the campus areas, but very compact and very concentrated. And it's a long brick building, 2 stories, which is half the university and half is the Swedish Geological Survey, the National Geological Survey. So the joke is usually that you get your training in one half of the building, and then you end up working in the other half of the building. I will endeavor to put in pictures of all the campus areas for next time. I do apologize.
Yes, we have time for. There's one person wondering a bit more about what the gentleman was wearing in the nation picture that you showed. Maybe he's referring to the medals.
Yeah. This is very, very complicated. When you become an official at your nation, and anyone can become that, it means that you are employed by the nation, and in some cases it is full time. You basically break your studies for a year and work for your nation in an official capacity. This is regarded as a rather good thing to have in your CV in Sweden, because it shows that you have been active in running what in many cases is a fairly large and complex company. If you think Norrland Nation, 16,000 members, they have events, I think at least 5 times a week. That is basically running 2 large restaurants and a number of special events. This is good training for all kinds of business event. But the officials, they wear various sashes to show their position. They receive medals that are peculiar only to the nation, to their own nation, or to the nations here in Uppsala. And they tend to end up with an awful lot of decorations. And some of them are invented just for fun. Actually, I used members from my own nation to help me move my office, and basically 80 shelf meters of books. That took some time, and I had a group of enthusiastic student helpers for that. And afterwards, they, of course, created a medal for that. So you tend to pick up things. But I should also say that also outside the nations, Uppsala University is one of the few, shall we say, authorities in Sweden that are allowed to issue their own medals that are regarded as official medals. I mean, you can wear them when you meet the king and so on. And Uppsala University, I think we have 6 or 7 official medals of our own, which you actually can end up receiving for, well, works for science and so on. But sashes and medals and special little chains and things, that is mostly the nation things. And if you're interested, just approach one of. There's at every nation someone who knows everything about that and is happy to speak for hours about it. So you will beware. You you will learn perhaps more than you want.
That's for sure. I think that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much, Mikael, and thank you everyone who attended and asked questions. I hope you got to know your university a bit better, and you still have plenty of years to learn even more. There's more to learn. So again, thank you so much, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye.
Bye. Bye.